Good morning everyone, it is the start of a new day here at the AVDC workshop. I finished off some work yesterday in the afternoon with the fill piece, which is going to go between the two sub boxes. It's a bit like an extension of the center console. I'm not really going for the full length center console look, but the boot install does kind of lend itself. So I'm actually making this a little bit different, but a little bit familiar at the same time. Most of all, I didn't want to make it flat. I wanted to make it more complicated instead. So I've set this shape and I'm going to take you through how I did it. This is what we've got here. I set this curve with a thin strip of MDF on the side of one of the boxes, having marked on with pencil where the center console was, where I wanted it to end, and the things that I had to clear. This is the front part of the car, and that's the back. I then made this jig, and it was a pretty quick jig out of scraps and everything, just so that I could set these two pieces of 6mm MDF and laminate them together with C8 glue. And I've used brads to affix them to the jig because I wasn't really that interested in trying to clamp it all down and have it work evenly, so there are going to be some brads to pull out of this. I was just interested in getting this done before I went home yesterday. The other thing I've done is I've used one of the template frames in order to cut the outline on the bottom piece. So there's a discrepancy in shape there, and that's because the inner piece, with the bottom piece, with any luck, is already shaped to fit. So my next step is to pull this off of the former, give it a little bit of a trim, and then see if it fits. I'm not sure if I'm going to need some reinforcing under this to stop it straightening out over time or delaminating. I suppose I will burn that bridge when I get to it. So I'm going to pull this off for now and see how it's gone. Cool, I'm really happy with that. That has kept its shape and has laminated really nicely. Lots of nail holes to fill. That's fine, I don't know. There's probably different ways I could have done it, but this got the process done at the time of day that I couldn't think of any better way to do it. So you can also see the shape that is cut into that. So right now I'm going to use the router trim bit to trim this all to shape, and then we can test fit it in the car, see how it fits. What I want to do one last check of before I try it in the car is see if that MDF is holding its shape. So I'm going to sit it back over the jig and just see how evenly it's sitting. Pop that down there. Yeah, look, you can see that it has pulled back to straight a little bit there. It's not too bad at that end, but at this end it certainly has tried to straighten up again. So I may need some bracing underneath to try and get it to hold its shape. that is a pretty good start. And that drops in, a little bit of fettling, but it does drop in. It goes further than I need it to. It's got the right profile, so there's no bits exposed. You can see that curved section is not exposed yet, so we've got a little bit of leeway there. The depth is good, I really wanted to give that impression of depth up the front. And if we have a look around the front, yeah, that meets up where we need it to on our filthy center console. So I think we're on the right track here. The main thing I'm probably going to do is shrink it by 1/8 of an inch on either side, because this has to drop in afterwards. It's going to be a serviceable piece, so it needs to be able to come in and out to work on the install if I ever need to. So yeah, I want to trim that just a little bit, but that's the thing. I made it to be an interference fit first of all, because I can trim it back, as opposed to making it a loose fit and then not having it tight enough. So that's what I'll do next. Oh, that's what I'm talking about. We're on the money. That lines up beautifully, and we've got a very polite gap along there. You can see that it's sitting a little bit lower now that it's been trimmed. You can just see that curved section. But like I say, that curve is going to need a little bit of bracing so that it appears correctly. And in here, oh yes, that is what I want. That's how I want it to meet up. So that's, with a little bit of shaping, that's going to look beautiful. That's exactly how I want it. Fantastic. I suppose I ought to also take a moment to show you that I've done some trims in here. They're actually really quite minimal, and that is because this is the factory boot floor height, and I'm actually just blending into the lip of this fill panel here because it's symmetrical, it's neat, and it's really not of much concern. The edges even, gee, it's a bit dark, but the edges even basically come down to this MDF panel on the floor, so that's going to make things relatively easy. They lift up, and there's still a little bit of space there for goodies, which will go in later on. And they locate quite easily. Oops. And they locate quite easily. You can also see, you might be able to see, got a fair bit of room down here still. Certainly a good 100 mil or so at least, and even more at the front. You can actually see the center bracket there underneath. It's not getting in the way too much, fortunately. So, yeah, this is coming together, and it's coming together today. I'm so excited. I mean, just look at it, look at it, look at it. All right, I've got to show you guys this because it is everything. This is our center panel, and it is curved, and like I said, I was interested in adding a bit more strength back to it with some ribs, and that is what I've done. This is the back, that is the front edge. What I did was take the two formers that I had cut to form this over originally and use the curve of the former, stuck it on there and cut it as a rib, and then duplicated that on the other one, obviously. What you didn't know until now is that the rear section of this panel is going to be removable so that you can see the distribution blocks and the processor underneath. And I wanted to integrate a way to lock these things into place. And I've done that in several stages. So at the front here, we've got two fingers, which are the ends of the ribs, which will lock in between the underside of the center console and the metal floor. So that's going to hold the front in place very nicely. A little bit further along, there's a very good reason that I've got these blocks here to space these apart. Now, the outside of these are 200 millimeters apart, and that's for a very good reason. The mounting brackets for the box are 200 millimeters apart right there. So they're going to fit tightly in between them, and most likely I'm going to screw sideways into it to retain, to hold this down against those brackets that are also securing the box. This line here is where the two halves are going to be separated, but you'll notice it's not where the ribs separate. And that, again, is for a very good reason. It's because these will actually slide underneath the front half of this curved panel, and with this diagonal cut will actually lock into place. This cut will mesh and that will lock into place so that this front edge can be slid underneath the panel, lock it in, and then the rear edge will drop into the trim panel, and that will be held in place by virtue of the front and the rear both sitting in and meshing with the panels around them. So that'll be easily removable, but also sit in place firmly. Now, of course, I've not yet cut this panel. I haven't glued these ribs in place, so I'm able to, even though I've glued these ones, I'm able to remove these once it's been shaped in order to cut it and refit the ribs. And I'm doing some shaping to the top of the panel, which is why I haven't cut that yet. It makes a lot more sense to shape it while it's all one piece. Because I'm going to cut it, the tolerances on this will change. So when I've screwed these ribs down, I've actually used a jigsaw blade, to get a bent one at that, to give me the clearance I need. So that when I cut this with the jigsaw blade, very carefully, very steadily, this gap will close up perfectly and will be all set. So you can see the screws underneath. I did go for a little bit of mechanical fastening just to give us, I guess, some backup when it comes to holding this all together. But they are CA glued, and they're CA glued quite well, as you can tell. So, you know, they're not going far, but I've got secondary fastening, mechanical fastening as well. So I'm going to give this as long as I can to dry. I don't want to go handling it until that glue is completely set. And then we're going to, well, we're going to start setting the top on it and getting it ready to body fill. Meanwhile, I've got the car here. And the last major piece of woodworking that I know we're going to have to do, apart from this fill panel down here, which I have templated and which will all make sense in due course, is this mouth here. So as you can tell, it's all there, it's all geometrically correct, but it's not overly pretty just yet. And part of the problem is that we are going to need to wrap this in vinyl. The inside of this is going to be in a softer material like carpet or felt, and there's going to be materials meeting at this point. And I've decided the best way to go about interfacing them is to have a bezel. So what I'm going to do is rabbet this opening so that we can flush mount a bezel in there. That will also give us the opportunity to create a nice even round over all the way around. That'll get wrapped in vinyl itself and then put in place. So that will cover the interface between carpet and vinyl and any joins that are going to happen there, and give it just a little bit better rounding and airflow there. And I think will just be the finishing touch this needs. And then we're on to body filling, shaping, and preparing this whole lot for primer, which is really exciting. So I'm going to get on with it. Well, hello there, it's voiceover Callum here, explaining what the heck I'm doing right here. So you can see we've got the top of this panel that we've been working on. What I'm doing is laying down some CA super glue, really good fixing things really quickly. You see I've got a piece of 6mm MDF there cut to a 6mm wide strip. And what I'm about to do is glue that down to our centerpiece here along the whole length, just lining it up there carefully because it's got to follow the curve in both axes. And then getting Adam here to spray down some accelerator to let that glue set up as quickly as possible, and doing it to the other side. So what the heck am I doing here? Well, this is really just forming the shape. I don't want a totally flat panel. I actually want to have a bit of curve in it, and this is just setting the outer bounds of that curve.
And here's the piece with the 6mm strips glued on there.
Ready for
And
body
then
filler.
applying some body filler and sanding that to shape. You'll see that I've also added some 2 little pieces to the front and back edges. And I think those sort of details just really set a build like this off, you know, giving it a bit of shape rather than just curving a flat piece of MDF and calling it good. Of course, it's more complicated, it takes more time, it takes more sanding, but isn't that just my style? I do like to make things complicated, and you know, it all pays off in the end. So yeah, this is going to look really good when it's done. So how am I going to finish this? Well, you have to wait and see, because we're getting really close to the part of the series where we start finishing things. And, you know, choosing materials and applying them all so that it all comes together and looks really nice. I really love to use factory style finishes, not to make it look like it was factory, but to make it look like it fits in with the look of the car. You know, without completely doing car interior from scratch, it can look really good when you actually use some materials and some finishes that, you know, tie in with the rest of the interior that's already there. And this is no exception. But I have found some materials that just are really going to work really, really nicely in this install, and we'll be showing them off very soon in upcoming episodes of Connected, so I can't wait to show you that. But for the meantime, just applying some last finishing here, just with some blade putty, just to get rid of any little pinholes and things like that, because it is important to get that surface really, really nice and smooth. You know, having done some priming on there as well to seal that MDF, and just sanding it down by hand so that it's as smooth as it can be. You can see that this piece has been separated now as well, so it can slot into the front half of it. This has been the rear half. It can slot in there really easily to cover up the DSP, or I can remove it and show off the DSP, and it all fits together beautifully, so that's kind of cool. And hey, this might not look like much, but this centrepiece was a reasonable amount of work, and it was an important part of tying the 2 boxes in the boot and the back seat together. So I think it's come out really, really well, and I can't wait to show you the finishing process on an upcoming episode of Connected.